Snow sealed the glen like a coffin lid. Dunrock Manor crouched black against the white, its windows blind with frost. Inside, the fire spat and died. Lord Alistair MacRae lay across the Persian rug, throat opened ear to ear, blood steaming on the hearthstones. Yet the door was bolted from within, the windows sealed by the storm. No footprints marred the fresh drift outside. Hercule Poirot, summoned by telegram 3 days prior, arrived too late, trapped now with 5 strangers and a corpse that should not bleed in a locked room. Chapter 1. The telegram in the night. The dog-cart lurched to a halt before the iron gates of Dunrock Manor, and Hercule Poirot, wrapped in a travelling rug the colour of wet slate, felt the cold strike through his potent leather shoes like a scalpel. It was the 23rd of December, 1935, and the Scottish Highlands had declared war on civilization. Snow had fallen without cease for 72 hours. The telegraph wires sagged like broken harp strings. The nearest village, Inverlochry, lay 8 miles back under drifts deep enough to bury a man standing. The driver, a taciturn crofter named McIver, spat into the blizzard. "No further, sir. The Laird's road is gone. You'll walk the avenue or bide here till spring." Poirot considered the avenue. A 1/4 mile of virgin white between skeletal oaks. The manor itself, a black silhouette against a sky the colour of old pewter. Somewhere within, a man was dead, or soon would be. The telegram in Poirot's breast pocket crackled when he breathed. Sent 3 days prior. The postmark, Inverlochry, 20th December. By the time Poirot reached Scotland, the storm had devoured the world. He descended, valise in gloved hand. "Merci, mon ami. Keep the fare and the rug. I shall not need warmth where I am going." McIver's laugh was a crow's caw. "You'll need a shroud, more like." The cart vanished into the white. Poirot trudged. Snow filled his galoshes at once. The wind clawed his moustaches into icicles. Yet the little Belgian's eyes, green as absinthe, missed nothing. No tire tracks marred the drive. No smoke rose from the manor's chimneys. Only one set of prints led to the house. Broad, booted, splayed as if the maker staggered under a burden. They ended at the portico. None returned. The great door, oak studded with iron, older than the Jacobite Rising, stood ajar. A ribbon of candlelight trembled across the threshold, gilding the snow to blood. Poirot stepped inside. The hall swallowed him. Flagstones gleamed with meltwater. A suit of armour wept rust. Above the hearth, a stag's head stared with glass eyes, antlers draped in cobwebs thick as lace. The air smelled of peat, tallow, and something metallic, copper, perhaps, or fear. A figure detached from the shadows, tall, gaunt, dressed in black broadcloth, the butler. His face was a topographical map of Highland winters. "Fergus MacRae, sir, his lordship's man." The voice was gravel dipped in. "Whisky. You'll be the foreign detective. Hercule Poirot, à votre service." Poirot removed his hat, revealing hair black and brilliantined despite the journey. "Your master expected me yesterday. The storm expected you 3 days ago, more like. The wires are down, the lock is frozen, the world ends at the gate." Fergus took the valise without warmth. "This way, the others wait in the long gallery." Poirot followed, boots squelching. Portraits glared. Lairds in kilts, ladies in bombazine, all MacRaes, all dead. Their eyes followed the living with the patience of stones. Halfway down the corridor, a draught guttered the candles. Poirot paused. On the wainscot, a child's handprint, fresh, muddy, smeared the panelling at knee-height. He touched it. The mud was cold, gritty with peat. "Fergus, there is a child in the house." The butler's step faltered. No bairns at Dunroch since Miss Elspeth drowned in 97. 40 years gone. Poirot filed the anomaly. They reached the gallery. Double doors of carved yew swung inward. Heat rolled out, welcome, almost violent. A fire roared in a grate large enough to roast an ox. Above it, a tapestry depicted the Ichwij, the water horse of Gaelic myth, dragging a screaming rider into black waves. The horse's eyes were sown with jet. They glittered. 5 people turned as Poirot entered. First, the widow, Lady Morag Macrae, 41, once a Glasgow beauty, now brittle as spun sugar. Her morning gown was black velvet, high-necked, but the lace at her cuffs trembled with every breath. Her eyes were the grey of winter locks, and they hated. Second, the niece, Miss Eilid Macrae, 29, black hair coiled like a raven's wing. She wore a man's tweed jacket over a wool dress the colour of heather. Her gaze was steady, curious, unafraid. Third, the comrade, Captain Rory Drummond, late of the Black Watch. His face was a map of Flanders, scarred by mustard gas, one eye milky. He leaned on a Malacca cane, knuckles white. A regimental tie, faded but proud. Fourth, the physician, Dr. Lachlan Fraser, mid-50s, spectacles fogged with brandy fumes. His waistcoat strained, his hands shook. A stethoscope peeked from his pocket like a guilty secret. Fifth, the secretary, Miss Violet Shaw, 25, London vowels, ink beneath her fingernails. Her dress was bottle green, severe, but her lips were bloodless. She clutched a leather-bound ledger, as if it were a shield. Poirot bowed. "Mesdames, messieurs, I am desolated to meet under such circumstances." Lady Morag's voice cut like a shard of ice. "You are late, Monsieur Poirot. My husband is dead." "Dead?" Poirot's eyebrows ascended. The telegram spoke of fear, not fact. Fear became fact at midnight. Eilid said quietly, "Come, we'll show you." They processed through corridors where shadows pooled like ink. The house groaned, timbers contracting in the cold, or something older stirring in. The walls. Poirot noted details with the precision of a watchmaker. The library door was closed. Oak, iron-bound, a bolt the thickness of Poirot's wrist thrown across. "We broke it down," Captain Drummond rasped. "Took 3 of us and a fire-axe." Splinters still littered the threshold. Inside, the room was a tableau of violence. Lord Alistair Macrae lay on his back before the hearth, arms flung wide as if in supplication. His throat was opened from ear to ear, a second mouth grinning red. Blood had soaked the Bokhara rug, steamed, then frozen in crimson stalactites. The fire was dead. Only ash and one stubborn ember glowed. Beside the right hand lay a Highland dirk, Skian Douve, black-handled, the Macrae crest on the pommel. The blade was clean. Poirot knelt, heedless of his trousers. The wound is left to right, deep, severing carotid and jugular, yet the dirk is in the right hand. Curious. He touched the blood. Still warm. Death within the hour. You discovered him. At midnight, Lady Morag whispered. We heard a sound, like a gull, but inside. Then silence. The door was bolted. We called. No answer. Dr. Fraser cleared his throat. Rigour has not yet begun. Body temperature suggests death at 11:47, perhaps, Poirot interrupted, glancing at the stopped clock in the hall. The ember in the grate corroborates. It would die within the hour. Miss Shaw opened her ledger. Lord Macrae was alive at 11:30. I took dictation, a letter to his solicitors. He seemed agitated. About? Money. A withdrawal. £10,000. He would not say where it went. Poirot stood. The room was a cube. Door bolted, windows latched, leaded panes filmed with frost. Snow banked to the sills outside. No disturbance. The chimney was narrow, soot-caked. A child might descend, but not carrying a corpse. He examined the bolt. Solid iron, no play. The keyhole was empty. No key on the corpse, none on the desk. Impossible, Poirot murmured. A locked room, a warm corpse, a weapon that did not strike the blow, and yet— He bent closer to the wound. A faint bruise, thumb-shaped beneath the jaw. And on the dirk's hilt, a smear, not blood, but green, verdigris, or poison. Outside the storm redoubled. The windows rattled like teeth. Poirot straightened. "We begin with alibis, madame?" Lady Morag's fan snapped open. I retired at 10, read by candle, the 39 steps, heard nothing until the scream. Captain, billards, alone, practicing cannon shots. The table is in the west wing, sound carries. Doctor, dispensing morphia to his lordship at 9. He suffered nightmares. Then I rested. The brandy on his breath was confession enough. Miss Shaw? Typing in the estate office. Adjoining this room. The wall is thin. I heard his lordship pacing until 11:30. Then nothing. Miss Macrae. Eyelid met his gaze. I walked the battlements. The storm fascinated me. I saw no one. Fergus, silent until now, added, I barred the front door at dusk. No one entered or left. Poirot twirled his moustache. Bon. We have a corpse that should be cold, a room that should be open, and 5 souls who heard nothing. Yet the blood steams. He moved to the desk. Papers, a half-written will, ink blurred by a spilled glass. A map of the loch, marked with depths. A photograph, Alistair, younger, arm around a boy of 10. The boy's eyes were black, depthless. On the back, Fergus and me, 1895. Poirot's gaze flicked to the butler. Fergus's face was stone. A floorboard creaked overhead, slow, deliberate, footsteps, bare feet on freezing oak, all looked up. Dust sifted from the ceiling rose. Eyelid whispered, the nursery, boarded since Elspeth. The footsteps stopped. A child's voice sang, faint through the beams. The Gaelic words curled like smoke. No child had dwelt in Dunrock for 40 years. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The investigation begins, but first, he crossed to the fireplace, stirred the ash with the poker. Beneath the cinders, a scrap of tartan, Macrae hunting, scorched but legible. And melted into the stone, a single brass button, engraved with a crest. Chapter 2. The Locked Room Conundrum. Hercule Poirot stood alone in the library, the corpse of Lord Alistair Macrae, cooling between him and the truth. The others had been dismissed with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Leave me, s'il vous plaît. The little grey cells require solitude. The door closed. The bolt, replaced by Fergus with a spare from the gunroom, shot home with a clang that echoed like a coffin lid. Poirot waited until the footsteps faded, then began. First, the room itself. He paced it, heel to toe, counting. 4 strides north to south, 5 east to west, 12 feet by 15, ceiling 9 feet at the cove, 8 where the beam sags. Chimney breast, 22 inches wide, soot depth 4 inches. Insufficient for a man, possible for a child or a cat. He produced a silver tape measure, a gift from the Sûreté, and measured the bolt. 3 1/8 inches thrown into the jamb. The oak door, 1 3/4 inches thick, iron hinges rusted but sound. No splintering save where the axe had bitten. Windows, 4, each with 12 diamond panes, lead cames swollen with frost. Latches frozen shut. Outside, snow banked to the sills. No ledge, no disturbance. Poirot opened his valise. From a velvet-lined case, he took a magnifying lens, a packet of rice paper, a camel hair brush, and a small tin of lampblack. He dusted the desk, the dirk, the bolt, fingerprints, smudged, useless. On the blotter, however, a perfect thumbprint in green ink. He lifted it with rice paper, labelled it X1. Next, the corpse. Alistair Macrae had been a big man, 6 feet, broad-shouldered, once powerful. Now he looked diminished, like a suit emptied of its owner. Poirot knelt again. "The wound," he murmured. "Left to right, descending angle. The blade entered here." He touched the hollow beneath the left ear, and exited here, severing the sternocleidomastoid. Depth, 3 inches at least. The dirk is only 2.5 inches of blade. Impossible, without leverage. He lifted the right hand. Rigour absent, but the fingers were curled as if clutching something. Between index and thumb, a single fibre, coarse, heather-coloured. Poirot sniffed the wound. Beneath the copper of blood, a faint almond bitterness. Cyanide? No, aconite, perhaps. He scraped a flake into a glassine envelope. The dirk's hilt. The green smear was verdigris, but fresh, not centuries old. Someone had handled old bronze recently. Poirot stood. The staging is meticulous. The body placed post-mortem, the dirk arranged. But why the locked door? To delay discovery, yes. Yet the blood is warm. The murderer lingered. He moved to the fireplace. The single ember had died. The ashes were cold. He raked them carefully. Beneath, the scorched tartan scrap. Macrae hunting. The colours still discernible, green, black, red, and the brass button. Poirot held it to the candle. A crest, a mermaid combing her hair, the Macrae motto beneath, per ma pateram. But the button was small, a child's, and the shank was snapped clean, as if torn away in a struggle. A floorboard creaked overhead, the same deliberate tread as before. Poirot froze. The nursery again. He glanced at his watch. 3:17 a.m. He opened the door a crack. The corridor was empty, but the grandfather clock, stopped at 11:47, now showed 3:18. Its hands had moved. Poirot closed the door, relocked it. Someone plays with time. He returned to the desk, the half-written will. The ink trailed off, blurred by spilled whiskey. A second sheet beneath, a crude map of Lochden Rock, depths marked in fathoms. A red X at the centre, labelled Armada. Poirot folded both into his pocket. Dawn seeped grey through the frosted panes. The storm had paused, as if listening. Poirot summoned the household to the long gallery at 8. They assembled like chess pieces. Lady Morag in black bombazine, veil lifted to reveal eyes red-rimmed but dry. Captain Drummond nursing a hip flask. Dr. Fraser pale, sweating despite the cold. Miss Shaw clutching her ledger. Eily composed, but her fingers worried a sprig of heather. Fergus impassive, a shadow in black. Poirot began without preamble. The murder occurred elsewhere. The library is theatre. Observe. He produced the fibre. Wool, hand-spun, dyed with bog myrtle. Local. Found in the corpse's hand, not from his clothing. Drummond snorted. Could be anything. Précisément, but not from this rug. Poirot indicated the Persian. Silk and wool, factory dyes. He laid the button on the table. A child's, from a garment torn violently. The tartan matches the scorched scrap in the grate. Lady Morag's fan trembled. Elspeth's pinafore. I burned it years ago. Yet here it is, and the clock, Poirot gestured to the hall, moved its hands in the night. Someone wishes us to believe in ghosts. Miss Shaw opened her ledger. Lord Macrae withdrew $10,000 on 10th December. Cash, no record. Blackmail, Poirot suggested. Or treasure, Aelid said quietly. The Armada galleon. Alistair believed it sank in the loch. Spent thousands on divers before the war. Captain Drummond laughed, a sound like tearing canvas. Fool's errand! The loch's bottom is peat and bones. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Bones interest me. Doctor, the wound? Your professional opinion? Fraser adjusted his spectacles. Suicide. The dirk is his. The angle, impossible. Poirot cut in. A right-handed man cannot slash so deeply left to right without twisting the wrist unnaturally. Observe, he mimed the motion, dirk in hand. The blade would glance off the collarbone, yet the cut is clean to the spine. He produced the glassine envelope. Aconite, I believe. Paralysis, then the throat cut elsewhere. The body carried here, staged. Lady Morag rose. You accuse us of carrying a corpse? I accuse geometry. The bolt, the windows, the chimney. Only one possibility remains. He crossed to the bookcases. Behind a row of Scott's novels, a panel clicked. A narrow door, concealed, opened onto stone stairs descending into darkness. The smuggler's tunnel, Eilidh breathed, boarded up after the war. Boarded, yes, but not sealed. Poirot produced a pry bar from his valise. We reopen it. They descended single file, candles guttering. The air turned damp, briny. The steps spiraled 30 feet down, then levelled into a passage cut through living rock. Water dripped, their footsteps echoed. After 50 yards, a chamber, a boat, 12-foot clinker-built, oars missing, lay on its side. The hull was crusted with ice, but fresh scratches marred the gunwale. On the thwart, a key, the library key, wrapped in a child's pinafore, monogram EM, soaked in blood that steamed in the cold. Poirot lifted it with a handkerchief. The blood was warm. Captain Drummond swore. That's impossible. The lock's frozen solid. Poirot touched the key. The metal burned cold, then, impossibly, grew hot. Blood seeped from the wards as if the iron bled. He looked up. The tunnel continued, sloping down toward the loch. Water lapped at the threshold, black and glistening. A child's footprint, bare, perfect, led into the flood. And vanished. Poirot's voice was soft. The murderer did not walk through walls. He walked through water, and the loch gave passage. From the darkness beyond, a splash. Slow, deliberate. Something large moved beneath the ice. Chapter 3. The Widow's Secret. The tunnel mouth had collapsed with the finality of a tomb. Boulders the size of coffins blocked retreat. Dust still drifted like grave mist. Poirot's candle, now the only light, revealed 6 faces lit from below. His own, composed eyelids, pale but resolute. Lady Morag's, a mask of porcelain cracking. Captain Drummond's, twisted with fury. Dr. Fraser's, slick with sweat. Miss Shaw's, eyes wide behind smudged spectacles. Fergus was absent, vanished in the collapse, or never there at all. Poirot raised a hand. Silence. Panic is the murderer's ally. Water lapped higher, black and oily, already ankle-deep. The boat rocked gently, as if nudged by an unseen hand. Options, Poirot said briskly. We climb the fall, we drown, or we follow the tunnel to the loch. The boat suggests the third. Drummond spat. Into that black hell. The ice is 2 feet thick. Yet something moved beneath it moments ago. Poirot knelt, touched the water. Warm. Geothermal spring, perhaps. The loch thaws from below. He examined the boat. 12 feet, clinker-built, tarred oak. The missing oars had been lashed beneath with new rope, manila, not hemp. On the thwart where the bloody key had lain, a fresh carving, crude but deliberate. M+F, Morag and Fergus. Lady Morag's laugh was brittle. Childish games. My husband is dead, and we play at riddles. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Madam, riddles are the alphabet of murder. He distributed tasks with military precision. Drummond and Fraser righted the boat. Eilidh and Miss Shaw bailed with their hats. Poirot searched the chamber. Behind a fallen stone, a child's shoe, modern size 11, rubber sole caked in loch mud. Inside, a scrap of paper, folded small. Poirot unfolded it by candlelight. A child's scrawl in green ink. He promised me the moon, but gave me the loch. the same green as the thumbprint on the blotter. Water reached their knees. The boat floated free. "Embark!" Poirot ordered. "Vite!" They clambered in, 6 souls in a craft built for 4. Drummond and Fraser took the thwarts, using broken planks as paddles. The current caught them, gentle, inexorable, pulling toward the loch. The tunnel narrowed, the ceiling lowered until they ducked. Stalactites wept icy tears. The air grew warmer, thick with peat and rot. Miss Shaw whispered, "I hear singing." They all heard it, the Gaelic lullaby, closer now, inside the stone. "Hush ye, my bairnie, the loch is deep." Lady Morag's knuckles whitened on the gunwale. Elspeth's song. She sang it the day she drowned. Poirot's voice cut through. "Tell me of the drowning, madame." Morag's eyes were fixed ahead, where the tunnel opened into starlight. Impossible starlight under ice. 1897, August. Alistair was 17, Elspeth 7. They played on the jetty. A game. Water horse. Alistair pushed her. Said she slipped. The loch took her in seconds. They dragged for days. Found only her ribbon. Eyelid's voice was soft. Fergus was there too. 10 years old. He saw everything. Drummond grunted with each stroke. Boy vanished after. Thought drowned himself in grief. The boat emerged into a cavernous space beneath the loch ice. Above, the frozen surface glowed pale blue, thick as cathedral glass. Fish darted like silver ghosts. In the centre, a dark column rose, warm water bubbling up. Keeping a circle open, the boat drifted toward it. Poirot stood, steadying against the mast stump. Observe, the ice is thinner here. Someone cut a hole, recently. A circular hole, 3 feet across, edges melted smooth. Beside it, dragged marks, bare feet, child-sized, leading to a pile of stones. On the stones, the library key, now clean, and the child's pinafore, dry, monogram EM faded to FM. Fraser's paddle slipped. Fergus McRae, the butler's name. Poirot lifted the pinafore. Beneath, a locket, tarnished silver. Inside, a curl of black hair and a photograph. Alistair, aged 17, arm around a boy of 10. The boy's eyes were black, depthless, on the back, to my brother forever. The boat rocked violently. Something struck the hull from below. Drummond cursed. Weeds! But Poirot saw. A pale hand, small, pressed against the planks, then gone. The current spun them. The open water narrowed. Ahead, a grate, iron bars, old, rusted, but new padlock gleaming. Locked, Eyolid said. The boathouse tunnel. Water rose to their waists inside the boat. Poirot produced a small leather case, lockpicks. Hold the candle, mademoiselle. His fingers, steady as a watchmaker's, worked the padlock. 10 seconds, click, the grate swung inward. Beyond, steps rising into the boathouse. They scrambled out, soaked, shivering. The boathouse was a cavern of shadows, smelling of tar and rot. Moonlight filtered through cracked boards. On the floor, footprints, bare, child-sized, leading to a side door. The door stood open to the storm. Snow had drifted in, but the prints continued outside toward the manor. Poirot knelt. Made within the hour. The snow has not filled them. Lady Morag sank onto a crate. Fergus lives. All these years. Drummond's voice was hoarse. We walled him in the tunnel after the drowning. Alistair's orders. Said the boy was mad with grief. Paid us to forget. Paid? Poirot's tone was silk over steel. £500 each, Fraser muttered. Blood money! Miss Shaw's teeth chattered. Lord McRae's nightmares began then. He saw Fergus in the pipes, in the mirrors, took morphia by the bottle. Poirot's mind raced. Fergus, walled alive, surviving on scraps, growing feral in the dark, the perfect instrument of revenge. But who held the leash? They returned to the manor through the storm, following the footprints. The trail led to the kitchen door, unlocked. Inside, The prints became wet, then vanished on the flagstones. The house was silent, but not empty. Poirot gathered them in the great hall. The fire had been stoked. Peat glowed red. On the table, a fresh pot of tea, cups for 6. 1 cup already poured. Lipstick on the rim, Morag's shade, crimson. Lady Morag stared. I did not pour that. Poirot lifted the cup. Beneath, a hatpin, pearl-headed, stained dark at the tip. He held it to the light. Blood and aconite residue. Madame, this is yours. Morag's hand flew to her hair. I lost it yesterday. Liar, Drummond growled. I saw you with it at dinner. You threatened Alistair, said you'd stick him like a pig if he changed the will. Morag's eyes blazed. He was changing it, to leave everything to Violet's bastard. Miss Shaw gasped. It's not true. There is no child. Chapter 4. The Physician's Ledger. The teapot had stopped pouring. 6 cups stood in a perfect circle, steam curling like question marks. Lady Morag MacRae lay where she had fallen, blood pooling beneath her like spilled ink. Fergus was gone, swallowed by flame or shadow, no one could say. The dirk lay beside her clean now, as if it had never tasted blood. Hercule Poirot stood motionless, hands clasped behind his back, eyes half closed. The little Belgian's mind was a cathedral of order, and chaos had just rung the bells. Bon, he said at last, we have a confession, a corpse, and a conflagration. Yet the puzzle is not complete. The physician's ledger, where is it? Dr. Lachlan Fraser, face the colour of tallow, fumbled in his waistcoat. I left it in the surgery. Then we retrieve it at once. They moved as a silent procession. Poirot leading, candle raised, eyelid supporting Miss Shaw, whose knees buckled with every step. Captain Drummond limping, hip flask empty. Dr. Fraser trailing, spectacles fogged with more than cold. The house felt larger now, corridors stretching like the tunnels beneath. The surgery was in the east wing, a narrow room lined with bottles and books. The air smelled of carbolic, laudanum, and fear. On the desk, the ledger, black leather, spine cracked. Poirot opened it with reverence. Pages rustled like dry leaves. Poirot's finger paused at the last entry. V.S. Miss Shaw. Violet Shaw shook her head violently. There was no child. Fraser's voice was a croak. Alistair believed there was. Delusion from the morphia. I recorded what he said. Poirot turned the page. A loose sheet slipped out. A prescription slip, torn in half. The missing half was in Morag's handwriting. Aconite, 10 grains to be administered in whiskey. Drummond swore. She planned it all along. No, Poirot corrected. She adapted. The original murder was Fergus's. Morag seized the opportunity to eliminate her husband and frame the ghost. He closed the ledger. But the aconite, where is the vial? Fraser opened a drawer, empty. Curious. Poirot's gaze swept the room. On the windowsill, a single drop of liquid, clear, beaded like mercury. He touched it, sniffed. Aconite. Fresh. Outside, dawn bled grey across the snow. The loch was visible from the window, a black mirror under thinning ice. In the centre, the hole they had seen from below gaped like an eye. Something floated there. The missing vial, corked, bobbing gently. Aelid whispered, the current brought it up. Poirot's mind raced. The tunnel connects surgery to loch. Someone disposed of evidence. They returned to the great hall. The fire had burned low. Morag's body was gone. Only a dark stain remained, and the dirk, now embedded in the table, point down. Drummond's face twisted. Ghosts don't move corpses. No, Poirot agreed. Living hands do. He examined the stain. Beneath the rug, a trapdoor, concealed, iron ring flush with the floor. He lifted it. Stone steps descended into darkness. "The second tunnel," Aelid breathed. "The servants' passage, boarded since the 45. Poirot produced his flashlight, electric torch, a novelty in 1935. The beam cut downward. The steps were wet, footprints ascending, bare, child-sized, but also larger, booted. They descended. The passage was narrower, air thick with mould. After 20 yards, a chamber, stone bier, chains rusted to dust. On the bier, Morag's body, arranged as if for burial, hands crossed, eyes closed. Her throat wound was gone, clean skin, no blood. Miss Shaw screamed. Poirot knelt. A dummy, wax exquisite work. He peeled back the lace at the neck, a seam stitches. The real Morag is alive. Drummond's cane clattered. Then who? The corpse in the hall was a substitute. Fergus's work or Morag's. They staged her death to escape suspicion. On the bier, a note, pinned with the hat pin. "The loch keeps its own. Third night comes." Poirot pocketed it. "We return to the surface. The game enters its endgame." They emerged into the hall. The front door stood open. Snow had drifted in, but footprints led out. 2 sets, one small, one large, side by side. Drummond checked the gunroom. "Rifles gone. Ammunition too." Poirot nodded. "They arm for war." The day passed in tense vigil. Poirot interviewed each survivor separately. Miss Shaw. "Morag hated Alistair. He found love letters, not mine, hers to Fraser, threatened to expose them." Dr. Fraser. "I supplied aconite for rats. Morag stole it. I swear I thought Alistair's death was suicide." Captain Drummond. "Alistair paid me to forget Fergus. I took the money, coward's coin." Eyelid. "Morag was my aunt by marriage. She despised the Macraes, said the loch cursed us all." At dusk, the storm returned, worse than before. The manor groaned like a ship. Windows rattled, doors slammed of their own accord. Poirot gathered them in the library, the scene of the first crime. The bolt was replaced, the room sealed. "Tonight," he announced, "we bait the trap." He laid out the evidence, ledger, note, vial, retrieved from the loch, now empty, wax, dummy's head, severed for examination. "The murderer will come for these. We wait." They took positions. Drummond behind the door, rifle cocked. Fraser at the window. Shaw and Ailou in the shadows. Poirot at the desk, pretending to read. Hours passed. The fire died. Cold crept in. At 11:47, the exact minute of Alistair's staged death, the bolt slid back. The door opened silently. 2 figures entered, Morag alive, face streaked with soot, Fergus grown tall in the dark, eyes black as oil. He carried the dirk, she, a Webley revolver. Morag's voice was calm. "The evidence, if you please." Poirot did not move. "You staged your death brilliantly. Wax pig's blood, Fergus's theatrics, but you forgot the ledger." Fergus smiled. "The loch will take it." He advanced. Drummond stepped out, rifle raised. "Drop it, you—" Morag fired. The bullet took Drummond in the shoulder. He fell, cursing. Fergus lunged at Poirot. The dirk flashed. Poirot sidestepped, using the chair as shield, the blade embedded in oak. Eyelid screamed. Fraser fumbled for the light switch. Useless, wires cut. In the struggle, Poirot seized Fergus's wrist. The boy, man, was strong, but Poirot was stronger in leverage. He twisted. The dirk clattered free. Morag levelled the revolver. "Enough! The tunnel floods at midnight. We leave you to drown." She backed toward the bookcase panel. Fergus followed. Poirot's voice was calm. "You forget the third night. The loch claims its due." Morag laughed. "Superstition." The floor trembled. Water seeped under the door, black, icy. The tunnel was flooding upward. Fergus's eyes widened. "Mother!" The bookcase swung open. Behind it, not the tunnel, but a wall of water rushing. Morag fired wildly. The bullet shattered a window. Wind howled in. The flood hit like a beast. Fergus was swept off his feet. Morag clung to the desk. Poirot grabbed Eyelid and Shaw, pulled them toward the door. Fraser followed, slipping. Drummond, wounded, crawled. The water rose to their waists, then chests. Books floated like drowned birds. Morag screamed as the current took her. Fergus reached for her. Too late, they vanished into the dark. The survivors burst into the corridor as the library door buckled. Water roared behind them. They fled upstairs, barricading the nursery door. Below, the manor filled like a sinking ship. Chapter 5. The Boat on the Loch. The nursery door held, for now. Water seeped beneath it in thin, dark fingers, probing the floorboards like a living thing. The 5 survivors, Poirot, Eyelid, Violet Shaw, Dr. Fraser, and Captain Drummond, blood soaking his shoulder, stood in a ragged semicircle, breath fogging the air. Poirot's voice cut through the hiss of rising water. "We are not safe! The loch invades from below! We must reach the roof!" Drummond, pale as parchment, leaned against the wall. "Roof! In this storm! We'll freeze! Better frostbite than drowning." Poirot's eyes swept the room. Rocking horse frozen mid-gallop. Dollhouse with its tiny windows shattered. A child's slate on which chalk letters still read "Fergus was here." Eyelid pointed to a hatch in the ceiling. "Servants' stairs to the attic. From there, the widow's walk." Fraser, trembling, produced a key from his waistcoat. "Master key! Opens everything!" Poirot took it. "Bon, Mademoiselle Shaw, assist the captain. Doctor, the candle. Mademoiselle Macrae with me." They climbed the narrow stairs, wood creaking under their weight. The attic was a cavern of trunks and cobwebs, moonlight slicing through a cracked dormer. The widow's walk door, iron-bound oak, stood at the far end. Poirot turned the key. The door resisted, then gave with a shriek. Wind knifed in, carrying snow like buckshot. They emerged onto the leaded roof. The manor crouched on its promontory, the loch a black void below. Ice cracked in jagged lightning across its surface. Open water steamed in the centre, a wound that refused to close. Drummond collapsed against the chimney. "We're trapped. The bridge is gone. The boats are in the boathouse," Poirot finished. "And the boathouse is flooded, but observe." He pointed. Halfway down the slope, the ice had buckled upward, forming a ridge. At its crest, the clinker-built boat from the tunnel, upright, oars now lashed to the thwarts. It rested on the ice as if placed there by a giant hand. Shaw whispered, "Impossible! It was below." "Impossible is the murderer's signature," Poirot said. "We descend." They used the guttering as a rope, sliding down the slate roof to the eaves, then dropping into snowdrifts waist-deep. The cold was a physical blow. Breath froze in their lungs. The ridge was steeper than it looked. Ice groaned beneath their feet. Halfway down, Fraser slipped. His scream was cut short as he vanished through a fissure. Black water swallowed him whole. Eyelid reached for him, too late. "Lachlan!" Poirot pulled her back. "The loch takes its due. We cannot help him." They reached the boat. It was intact, but the oars were bound with new rope. Manila again, and tied to one oar. Alistair's pocket watch, stopped at 11:47. The crystal was cracked. Water had seeped in, yet the hands had not moved. Drummond's voice was hoarse. "Time of death, but the body was warm at midnight." "Précisément," Poirot said. "The murder occurred elsewhere, the library a stage, the watch was planted." He examined the hull. Beneath the ice crust, fresh scratches as if dragged. And on the transom, carved deep, "Third night, third life." Shaw's teeth chattered. "Who's left?" Poirot did not answer. He untied the oars, distributed them. "We row to the far shore. The village lies beyond. They pushed off. The ice cracked beneath the boat's weight but held. The open water steamed, warm currents tugging at the keel. Halfway across the singing began again, beneath them now, inside the hull. "Hush ye, me bairnie, the loch is deep." The voice was Morag's. Drummond raised his rifle one-handed. "Show yourself!" The water bulged. A hand, pale, bloated, gripped the gunwale. Fergus's face rose, eyes black, mouth open in a silent scream. He was inside the ice, pressed against it from below. Shaw screamed. The boat rocked violently. Poirot seized the oar, struck the hand. It shattered like porcelain, wax again. The dummy from the beer, weighted, dragged here to terrify. "Morag lives," Poirot said. "She plays with our fear." The far shore was a white line. They rowed with desperate strokes. Behind them, the manor lights flickered, then died one by one. They beached on a shingle spit. The village was 2 miles through drifts, but smoke rose from chimneys. Salvation. Drummond collapsed. "I can't go on." Poirot knelt, examined the wound. "The bullet grazed the clavicle. You will live." But first, he produced the ledger, now sodden but legible. The final entry. Fraser wrote it after we left the surgery. 21 deck. M demands final dose. F will strike tonight. I cannot stop them. Eyelid's voice was small. Morag and Fergus planned a third murder. We are the third night, the third life. Poirot looked at each of them. One of us is marked. They trudged toward the village, supporting Drummond. The snow had stopped. Stars glittered like broken glass. At the first cottage, a crofter took them in. Peat fire, whiskey, blankets. Poirot refused rest. He commandeered the telephone, rang Inverness police. While they waited, he reconstructed the night. Alistair was drugged in the library at 11:30, carried via the servants' tunnel to the loch. Throat cut over the water. Blood washes away. Body returned, staged as suicide. Door bolted from inside using the smuggler's passage. The child's footprints, Fergus, small for his age, stunted by years in the dark. Shaw asked, but Morag's death? Staged. The wax dummy, pig's blood from the kitchen, Fergus's immolation, a trapdoor behind the grate, another tunnel. They fled with the evidence, planning to return for the last witness. Drummond's eyes narrowed. Who? Poirot's gaze settled on Elide. The heir. With you gone, the estate reverts to the crown. Morag wanted it burned, the secret buried. Eyelid paled. I'm next. The police arrived at dawn. 6 constables, a sergeant, dog-cart tracks cutting the snow. They searched the manor. The flood had receded as suddenly as it rose. The tunnels were dry, the library pristine, no bodies, no evidence, only one thing remained. In the nursery, the slate now read, 2 taken, 1 to go. The sergeant, a practical Highlander, scoffed. Ghosts and goblins, we'll drag the loch. They did. At noon, the grapples brought up the boat. Empty, but the watch now read 3:00 a.m., the hour of Morag's staged death. Poirot stood on the jetty, wind whipping his coat. They are not gone, they wait beneath. That night, the survivors were housed in the village inn. Poirot set a watch. At 11:47, the inn's clock stopped. Eilid's scream shattered the silence. They burst into her room. She stood at the window, nightgown soaked, eyes wide. On the pane, finger written in frost, the loch forgives nothing. Outside, footprints, bare, child-sized, led from the inn to the loch, then vanished into the ice. Drummond, bandaged but mobile, raised his rifle. I'll end this. Poirot stopped him. No, we end it with truth. He produced the locket from the tunnel. Inside, the photograph was gone, replaced by a single word, scratched into the silver, Mother. The loch cracked again, louder, closer. A fisher raced toward the inn. Poirot gathered them in the bar. "The third night is tonight. Morag and Fergus will come for Eilidh. We give them what they want." He laid out the plan. At midnight, Eilidh would walk to the jetty alone, wrapped in Morag's black cloak. Poirot and Drummond would follow, hidden. Shaw would signal with a lantern from the inn. The loch was a mirror of stars. Eilidh's footsteps crunched on the ice. She reached the jetty, stood at the edge, nothing. Then the ice bulged. Morag rose first, alive, hair streaming water, eyes mad. Fergus followed, dirk in hand. "Eilidh," Morag crooned. "Come home." Eilidh backed away. "You murdered my uncle." "For you," Morag said. "The estate is cursed. Better drowned." Fergus lunged. Drummond fired from the shadows. The bullet took Fergus in the leg. He fell, howling. Morag turned. Revolver raised, Poirot stepped into the moonlight. "Drop it, madame. The police wait in the boats." Morag laughed. "They'll never take us." She grabbed Eilidh, dragged her toward the open water. Fergus crawled after them, leaving a trail of blood. The ice cracked beneath their weight. Morag stepped onto the black water, and it held. Impossible! She smiled. "The loch keeps its own." She pulled Eilidh in. Drummond fired again. The bullet struck Morag's shoulder. She staggered but did not fall. Poirot ran onto the ice. It groaned, then gave. He fell through, into warm water, the current strong. Below, Morag and Eilidh struggled. Fergus floated nearby, eyes open, lifeless. Poirot swam, coat dragging. He reached Eilidh, pulled her free. Morag clung to his leg, dragging him down. Her face was inches from his. "You cannot win." The loch, the current shifted. Something large moved beneath, pale, immense. The H. of legend, or the loch's own fury. Morag's scream was cut short. She vanished into the dark. Poirot kicked upward, Eilidh in his arms. Hans Drummond's the police hauled them out. The ice closed over the hole as if it had never been. Chapter 6. The Sister's Diary. The village inn smelled of peat and wet wool. Hercule Poirot sat at the scarred oak table, the survivors arrayed around him like pieces on a chessboard after the king has fallen. Eilidh McCrae, wrapped in blankets, stared into the fire. Violet Shaw nursed a cup of tea with trembling hands. Captain Drummond, shoulder-bandaged, cleaned his rifle with mechanical precision. The police sergeant had taken statements and departed to wire Inverness for divers, though no one believed Morag or Fergus would be found. Poirot laid the evidence in a neat row. The cracked pocket watch, the child's shoe, the empty aconite vial, the locket with its scratched mother, and newly retrieved from the jetty, the dirk, frost etching its blade. "The third night has passed," he said quietly. "Yet the message remains. One remains. The puzzle is not finished." Eilidh's voice was raw. "Morag is gone. Fergus too. Who is left to kill?" Poirot's green eyes fixed on her. The secret itself. The truth of 1897. He produced a small water-stained diary from his coat, found in the nursery wall, behind a loose brick, missed in the chaos. The cover was calfskin, cracked, the pages warped but legible. Poirot opened it to the final entry, dated 15th of August, 1897. "Alistair says we will play water horse today. He will be the horse, I the rider. Fergus watches from the rocks. Alistair says if I fall, the loch will catch me. I do not want to play. But he pushed me. The water is cold. It pulls." Fergus screamed, then nothing. The ink was smeared, tears or loch water. Impossible to tell. Drummond's rifle clattered. The boys saw it all. "We," Poirot said. Fergus did not drown in grief. He was silenced. Alistair, 17, panicked. He and his friends, Drummond, Fraser, perhaps others, walled Fergus in the tunnel to hide the crime, paid him scraps to live like a rat. Shaw whispered, and Morag. Morag was Fergus's mother, Poirot said. A maid, seduced, sent away. She returned as Lady Macrae, married to her son's tormentor. When Alistair's conscience stirred, nightmares, morphia, the will, she saw her chance. She weaponized Fergus's rage. He turned the page. A pressed flower, forget-me-not, fell out. Beneath, in a child's hand, Fergus promises we will punish him. The loch will help. Aelid closed the diary. Elspeth's ghost was never the killer. It was guilt. Poirot nodded. The supernatural, footprints, singing, the boat on the ice, was Fergus and Morag. Wax dummies, pig's blood, ropes, and the loch's own currents. The storm masked their movements. Drummond's voice was gravel. I took the money. £500 to forget a child's scream. I'm as guilty as they. Poirot's tone was gentle but inexorable. Guilt is not murder, mon capitaine. But it is why you carried the body. Why Fraser supplied the aconite. Why Morag staged her death. He stood. The case is closed. The loch has its due. Outside, the snow fell, thicker. The loch was silent, ice reforming. That night, Poirot walked the jetty alone. The dirk was gone, taken by the police as evidence. But on the final piling, a fresh carving. He traced it with a gloved finger. The wood was warm. Behind him, Aelid approached. What will happen to the manor? Burn it, Poirot said. Some houses are better ashes. She nodded. And me? You inherit ruin, but also freedom. The Macrae curse ends with you. As they turned back, the ice cracked once more, soft, almost tender. A child's voice, faint, carried on the wind. Chapter 7. The Changeling. Hercule Poirot woke before light. The diary was gone. In its place on the nightstand lay a single forget-me-not, pressed flat and still damp. He lifted it to the candle. The petals were black at the edges, as if singed by frost. He dressed swiftly. Astrakhan collar turned up, galoshes buckled, and descended to the bar. The slate had been wiped clean save for one line, chalked in a child's uneven hand. The changeling comes at cock-crow. Aelid was already there, wrapped in a fisherman's sweater 2 sizes too large. Her eyes were ringed with sleepless violet. Violet Shaw sat beside her, ledger open, counting something in a whisper. Captain Drummond stood at the window, rifle across his arm, staring at the loch as if it might speak. Poirot laid the flower on the table. Elspeth's diary has swum away. We are not finished. Drummond's laugh was bitter. Morag and the boy are fish food. Let the dead bury the dead. Non, Poirot said. The dead do not write on slates. Someone lives. He opened his valise. Inside, the child's shoe, the locket, the cracked watch, all present, only the diary missing. Observe, he said, the thief took nothing of value, only the truth. Why? Shaw closed her ledger. To silence the past. If the diary surfaces, the estate is forfeit, murder, concealment, madness. The Crown takes all. Aelid's voice was steady. Then we find it before they do. They searched the inn. Nothing. Then the boathouse, the jetty, the manor ruins, waterlogged, timbers charred where the flood had burned itself out. Nothing. At cock-crow, 5:47 a.m., the village dogs began to howl. Poirot led them to the loch's edge. The ice was glass-smooth, newly frozen. In the centre, the open hole had sealed overnight, but a perfect circle of bare wood floated there. The diary, pages fanned like a water lily, ink dissolved into runes. Drummond raised his rifle. I'll shoot the bastard who... Poirot lowered the barrel. Wait. A figure skated across the ice, small, barefoot, moving with impossible grace. Fergus, but not the feral man of the tunnel. This was a child, no more than 10, clad in the pinafore with the faded FM. His hair was black, eyes blacker. He stopped at the diary, knelt, and pressed both palms to the ice. The loch answered. A low rumble. The ice bulged upward, forming a dome. Beneath it, Fergus's reflection smiled, older, scarred, the man they had seen drown. The child looked up straight at Poirot and spoke without sound. Changeling! Then the ice cracked. The child fell through. The diary sank. Drummond fired. The bullet starred the ice, but did not break it. Poirot was already moving, coat discarded, galoshes kicked off. He ran onto the loch, light, precise steps. The ice held. He reached the hole. Below, the child floated upward, arms outstretched. Poirot plunged his hand in, cold like a blade. He seized the pinafore and pulled up wax. The dummy again waited with stones, dressed in the child's clothes. The face was Fergus's, at 10 at 30 melting together. Behind him, eyelid screamed. Poirot turned. On the shore, the real Fergus stood, tall, soaked dirk in hand. Beside him, Morag, alive, hair plastered to her skull, revolver levelled. "Far enough, detective," Morag called. Her voice carried across the ice like a bell. "The diary is ours now," Drummond aimed. Morag fired first. The bullet whined past his ear. Poirot raised both hands. "You survived the loch. How?" Morag smiled. "The Ichwisgays family here, it keeps its own." Fergus skated forward. No, walked on the water, the surface dimpling but not breaking. He stopped an arm's length from Poirot. "You took my mother," he said. His voice was a child's and a man's at once. "Now I take yours." He lunged. Poirot sidestepped, using the dummy as a shield. The dirk pierced wax. Fergus overbalanced. Drummond fired. The bullet took Fergus in the chest. He fell, blood blooming red on the ice. Morag screamed, a sound not human. She ran onto the loch, revolver forgotten. The ice cracked beneath her. She knelt beside Fergus, cradling his head. "Fergus, my boy, my changeling." The ice gave way. They sank together, mother and son, entu lebed, in a final embrace. The loch closed over them without a ripple. The diary floated up once more, pages blank, then dissolved into pulp. Poirot stood alone on the ice. The wind had died. Snow fell straight and silent. Eyelid's voice carried from the shore. "Is it over?" Poirot looked at the hole. Beneath, two shadows drifted down, pale, small, hand in hand. "We," he said, "the changeling is home." Chapter 8. The Second Body. The shoe stood on the mantelpiece like a shrine. Inside, the water had frozen into a perfect lens. The scratched words, "The loch remembers," glinted beneath the ice. Poirot had not touched it since finding it at dusk. Eyelid slept fitfully in the next room, sedated with warm milk and a drop of Fraser's last laudanum. Violet Shaw had taken the ledger to the village clerk for safekeeping. Captain Drummond, shoulder stiff, pride stiffer, kept watch at the window, rifle across his knees. Poirot sat at the table, arranging the remaining evidence in a small, perfect circle. The cracked watch, the empty vial, the locket, the wax fragment, from the dummy's face. He spoke to the empty air. "Show me the second body." At 11:47 p.m., the hour that haunted them all, the candle guttered, though no draught stirred. The watch hands jerked forward 1 minute, then stopped. Drummond's voice was low. "Something's outside." Poirot joined him at the window. On the fresh snow of the inn-yard, footprints, bare, child-sized, leading to the door. None returning. They opened the door. The prince stopped at the threshold. On the mat, a single brass button, identical to the one from the nursery grate. Drummond's breath clouded. "Elspeth's, or Fergus's," Poirot said. "The changeling leaves gifts." They followed the prince backward. They led across the yard, down the slope, to the loch's edge. There the ice was unbroken save for one perfect circle. Melted, refrozen, melted again. Something bobbed in the centre. A man's hand, pale, fingers curled as if beckoning. Drummond swore. Another dummy? Poirot shook his head. Flesh this time. They fetched lanterns and the innkeeper's grappling iron. The lock gave up its prize reluctantly. Captain Rory Drummond, the second Drummond, rose from the water, throat slashed ear to ear, eyes wide in eternal surprise. His regimental tie was knotted tight, the scar across his cheek livid against the cold. Poirot knelt on the ice. The real captain, our Drummond, is the changeling. Behind them, a rifle cocked. The inn Drummond stood 10 paces away, weapon levelled. His voice was the same, but the accent had shifted. Glasgow beneath the Highland burr. Sharp, monsieur, too sharp. Poirot did not turn. You replaced him when? The tunnel collapse. Before. Rory took a bullet in Flanders, my bullet. I was his Batman. Took his papers, his face, his life. Morag paid me to keep watch on Alistair. When the old man started confessing, I helped stage the locked room. Fergus did the cutting. Morag promised me the estate when Eilidh was gone. Eilidh appeared in the doorway, blanket around her shoulders. You murdered my uncle. And Rory, the changeling said. He was weak, drunk on guilt. I slit his throat in the tunnel, dressed the dummy in his clothes, sank him with the boat. You dragged up wax. He gestured to the corpse. Now the loch gives him back. Poetic, aye? Poirot's voice was calm. And the diary? Burned. Secret swim, but paper sinks. The changeling backed toward the ice. One bullet left, for the heiress. He raised the rifle. Poirot moved first, flinging the frozen shoe. It struck the changeling's wrist. The rifle discharged into the snow. Eilidh ran forward. The changeling grabbed her, arm around her throat, dragging her onto the ice. Stay back! The loch cracked beneath them. The changeling slipped, grip loosening. Eyelid twisted free. Poirot advanced step by deliberate step. You are not the water horse. You are a man, and men fall. The ice groaned. The changeling looked down. Too late. The circle opened. He plunged through, rifle and all. Eyelid teetered on the edge. Poirot seized her wrist, pulled her to safety. The hole closed. Silence. Drummond's body, the real one, lay on the ice, eyes to the stars. Eyelid whispered, How many more? Poirot looked at the loch. The second body is accounted for. The third night is over. Chapter 9. The third night. The slate had been wiped again, but the chalk words lingered in Poirot's mind. 2 bodies, 1 soul. The loch still hungers. He stood alone in the bar. Evidence spread before him like tarot cards. The cracked watch, now reading 3 a.m. The locket, empty. The brass button, the frozen shoe, water melted to a dark stain. Eyelid entered barefoot, nightgown clinging with damp. I heard singing, inside the walls. Poirot's voice was soft. The third night begins. They woke Violet Shaw. She arrived clutching the ledger, eyes wide. The estate accounts, someone altered them last night. £10,000 transferred to an account in Glasgow, signed Eyelid McCrae. Eyelid paled. I signed nothing. Poirot nodded. The changeling's final play. Frame the heiress, ruin the name, let the loch take the house. Outside, the loch cracked. 3 sharp reports like gunshots. The ice split in a perfect triangle, pointing at the inn. Poirot gathered them by the fire. We end this tonight. The murderer returns for the last witness. Eilidh, we give him audience. He laid the trap. Eilidh would sit at the bar, cloaked in shadow, a dummy in her bed upstairs. Shaw would watch from the stairs. Poirot would wait in the cellar, door ajar. Midnight. The inn door opened without sound. A figure entered, Drummond's height, Drummond's limp, but the face was wrong. Younger, unscarred, eyes black as peat. The changeling, wearing the captain's skin like a coat. He carried the dirk. "Eyelid," he called, voice honey over gravel. "Time to join your kin." Eyelid stepped into the firelight. "You're too late. The police have the ledger." The changeling smiled. "Ledgers burn." He struck a match, tossed it onto the bar. Flames leapt up, paraffin-soaked rags prepared earlier. Shaw screamed from the stairs. The changeling spun, dirk raised. Poirot emerged from the cellar, pistol drawn, a small Belgian FN, gift from a grateful king. "Drop it," the changeling laughed. "You won't shoot. You need answers." "I have them," Poirot said. "You are Ian Drummond, Rory's bastard brother, Morag's other son, hidden even from Fergus. You killed Rory in Flanders, took his identity. Morag used you to watch Alistair, then to kill him. Fergus was the blade. You were the mind." Ian's eyes narrowed. Clever Belgian, but the loch is hungry. He lunged at Eyelid. Poirot fired. The bullet took Ian in the knee. He fell, howling. The fire spread, licking the beams. Smoke curled like ghosts. Eyelid grabbed the ledger, ran for the door. Shaw followed. Poirot knelt beside Ian. "Why the third night?" Ian spat blood. 3 souls for Elspeth, Alistair, Rory, Eyelid. Balance the scale." The ceiling groaned. A beam crashed, sparks flying. Poirot dragged Ian toward the door. The man fought, dirk slashing. It caught Poirot's arm, shallow, but burning. Outside, the loch roared. The ice split wide, a black chasm racing toward the inn. Eyelid shouted, "The jetty!" They ran. The inn collapsed behind them, a pyre lighting the snow. On the jetty, Ian crawled, leaving a trail of blood. "Mother!" he screamed to the water. The loch answered. A hand rose, Morag's, bloated, grey, then Fergus's, then Elspeth's, small, perfect, 7 years old. They pulled Ian down. He did not struggle. The ice closed. Poirot, Eilif and Shaw stood on the shore as the fire died to embers. The loch was silent, smooth as glass. Eyelid whispered, "Is it finished?" Poirot looked at the water. Beneath the new ice, 3 shadows drifted, hand in hand, sinking slow. "Oui," he said, "the third night is done." Chapter 10. The Grey Cells. Triumph Dawn painted Dunroch in ash and rose. The inn was gone. Only blackened beams and a single chimney standing like a gravestone. The loch had frozen solid overnight, its surface unmarked save for the jetty's last message. The loch forgives, but it never forgets. Hercule Poirot stood at the water's edge, coat buttoned to the throat, blood crusted on his sleeve from Ian's dirk. Eyelid Macrae and Violet Shaw flanked him, shawled, hollow-eyed, the only survivors. The police sergeant approached with 2 constables, dog carts steaming behind them. "Statements, monsieur," the sergeant said. "Then we drag the loch." Poirot raised a hand. "Unnecessary. The loch has spoken." He turned to the women. "Come, we conclude." They walked the jetty. Poirot spoke as if to the water itself. The case began with a locked room and a warm corpse. It ends with 3 nights, 3 bodies, 1 truth. Listen. He laid the final evidence on the snow-crusted planks. The cracked watch, now reading 6 Wilkes a.m., the hour of sunrise. The locket, empty, the brass button, the child's shoe, water-thawed to nothing. A single forget-me-not, black-petalled, pressed between glassine. Alistair Macrae was murdered for guilt. In 1897 he pushed his sister Elspeth into the loch. Fergus saw. Alistair, Drummond, Fraser walled the boy alive to silence him. Morag, Fergus's mother, cast out as a maid, returned as wife, nursing vengeance. Ian, her second son, hidden even from Fergus, wore Rory Drummond's face after killing him in war. Together they staged the horrors. Aconite in whiskey, throat cut over water, body returned via tunnel. door bolted from within by child-sized Fergus in the chimney flue. The singing, the footprints, the wax dummies, all theatre to break the living. Aelith's voice trembled, and the third night. "Balance," Poirot said. "Elspeth's scales. Alastair for the push, Rory for the wall, Eyelid for the inheritance. But the loch is not justice, it is hunger. Ian believed he fed it. He was wrong." Shaw asked the diary. Destroyed. The truth was the final victim. The sergeant cleared his throat. "Bodies, monsieur?" Poirot gestured to the ice. "There." Beneath the surface, faint but clear, 3 figures locked in tableau. Morag, arms outstretched. Fergus, small again, hand in hers. Ian, face unscarred, eyes open. They drifted just below the ice, preserved in a perfect sphere of clear water, as if the loss had frozen time itself. The constables crossed themselves. Poirot continued. "No need for grapples. The loch keeps its own museum." He turned to Eyelid. "The estate is yours. Ruined, cursed, but yours. Burn the manor, sell the land, begin again." She nodded, tears freezing on her lashes. "And you?" "I return to London. My train leaves Inverness at noon." The dog carts carried them away. Poirot sat beside Eily, valise on his knee. As they crested the glen, he glanced back. The loch gleamed. For one heartbeat, the ice shimmered. Elspeth stood on the surface, 7 years old, pinafore white, eyes ancient. She raised a hand. Poirot tipped his hat. The vision vanished. At the station, Poirot boarded the sleeper. In his compartment, he opened the valise. The evidence was gone, replaced by a single sheet of manor notepaper, water-stained, in a child's hand. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. The game is over. E." He smiled, folded it into his pocketbook.